Welcome to the deep dive. We're here to cut through the noise, really get to the heart of what drives success. Today, it's a fascinating journey we're on looking into, well, humanity's quest to understand the DNA of impact. Whether you're building a business, navigating investments, maybe just aiming for personal growth. We all want that secret sauce, right? For getting meaningful results. And you, our listener, you're here to get smart, fast, without feeling buried in information. That's exactly what this deep dive is all about. Think of us as your guides. We've got this incredible stack of sources, a whole library, really, from all sorts of fields. And we're going to pull out the absolute key nuggets, the surprising bits, help you connect the dots across all these different perspectives. So our mission today, pretty clear. We'll explore the bedrock principles of great strategy. Then we'll dive into the wild world of financial markets, often unpredictable, And finally, we'll unpack those crucial human factors. Innovation, leadership, personal effectiveness. They're indispensable. Get ready for some aha moments, I think, as we weave these powerful ideas together. Okay, let's get into it. Let's unpack this.
It's a really rich set of materials, absolutely. And what's so compelling, I find, is how these areas aren't separate silos. Not at all. They're deeply connected. You see how structural advantages, market psychology, and then these really human things, leadership, individual drive, they all come together to define what success looks like. It's about getting underneath, understanding the forces at play, not just watching the surface.
Okay, let's kick off with strategy. It's a word thrown around constantly, but what does great strategy actually mean? The sources seem to agree it starts with two basic questions.
Exactly. Loftley and Martin, in Playing to Win, they nail it. It boils down to, where will you play and how will you win there? Simple questions, but profound. And what's absolutely critical about that where to play question, it's not just picking your arena. It's deliberately deciding where not to play.
Ah, right. So the exclusion is key.
It creates focus, real valuable focus for an organization. Concentrating your effort, your resources, that's huge.
So clarity comes from what you rule out, not just what you target. Makes perfect sense. And this focus, it could be broad, could be narrow, depends on the context, obviously. But the real power, the strategic leverage, that happens when those two pieces, where to play, how to win, start working together, right?
Absolutely. They have to be integrated. Your choices need to support each other, not clash. This isn't just about, setting some big financial targets. It's about making a coherent set of choices, deliberate ones, defining your unique path to winning in the space you've chosen.
Like building a system.
Exactly. A system of choices that reinforce each other, making the whole strategy stronger.
Okay, so you know where you're playing, how you'll win. Then the sources bring up this idea of power with a capital P. Sounds serious. Hamilton Helmer says a business must achieve power or else face ruin. Wow. Stark.
It is stark, yeah. Helmer's concept of power is really crucial here. Think of it as a fundamental built-in advantage, something that lets a business earn consistently higher profits than its rivals. The sustainable moat, exactly. It's about having structural advantages that generate what he calls differential returns, profits well above your cost of capital over the long haul. And the really fascinating twist, I think, is his claim that all power starts with invention.
All power starts with invention.
That's what he argues. Now, invention here isn't just a new gadget. It could be any new way of doing things, a new business model, a process innovation, something that creates value or reorganizes a market differently. It's that initial spark that sets the stage for a sustainable edge. And this invention, it then drives market size, which is another key part of his big strategic equation.
All power starts with invention. That's a bold statement. What about, say, just really great execution or a brand built over decades? Does that count as invention for Helmer, or is he focused purely on disruption?
That's a fair question. His definition is quite broad, actually. It does cover novel business models, new processes, not just product breakthroughs. Netflix's streaming business is a perfect example from the sources. They gained power in a few ways. One was counterpositioning against Blockbuster. Remember Blockbuster?
Oh, yeah. Late fees.
Exactly. Netflix offered DVDs by mail, no late fees. Blockbuster couldn't easily copy that without destroying their own profitable but hated late fee model. So Blockbuster strengthens their stores. Those fees, they actually became liabilities. Netflix used a kind of strategic judo.
Clever.
Right. And they also developed process power, really efficient operations, and scale economies, even back in the DVD by mail days. These advantages let them capture those differential returns. Shows how invention can be more than just a new product.
That's a fantastic illustration. Business model innovation creating an almost unbeatable edge. So these powers, they give you something competitors find really hard to copy. Speaking of edges, Michael Porter's work on competitive strategy, That gives us a wider view of the whole industry, doesn't it?
Indeed. Porter really emphasizes how the structure of an industry shapes everything. Competitor positions, how intense the rivalry is. It's not just about your company. It's about buyer power, supplier power, the threat of new folks entering, substitutes, the five forces.
Right. The classic framework.
Understanding that structure and really analyzing your competitors before you make moves, that's essential for offense or defense. It helps you map the battlefield before you decide your tactics.
It sounds complex, like a dance between knowing yourself, your rivals, and the whole environment. And it seems easy to just get sucked into head-to-head fighting. But one source, Red Ocean Traps, warns about mental models that actually sabotage more creative strategies.
That's a really critical point. Red Ocean Traps basically says, watch out for the thinking that just pushes you to compete harder in existing crowded markets, the red oceans. Instead, you should be looking for Blue Ocean's new, uncontested market space. It pushes for innovative thinking beyond just beating the competition.
So don't just play the same game better. Maybe invent a new game.
Exactly. Too many companies get stuck benchmarking competitors or thinking market boundaries are fixed. This is a call to think differently, create new demand, avoid that competitive slugfest.
Okay, shifting from the mechanics to the companies themselves, the ones that last. Built to last challenges a big assumption, suggesting great companies don't solely depend on leaders with, like, magical qualities.
Yeah, that's quite hopeful, isn't it? For managers everywhere.
It is. Suggests success isn't just for the chosen few.
Right. The book emphasizes these lessons. The principles for building what they call visionary companies can be learned and applied by the vast majority of managers at all levels. It pushes back against the great leader myth. It argues these companies are built through consistent, disciplined principles anyone can learn.
Like GM under Sloan.
GM under Alfred Sloan is a prime example. He led them past forward through sustained leadership, smart strategic adjustments. It shows long-term success comes from methodical, persistent work. GE is another classic example, adapting over decades. It's about institutional commitment, not just one person's genius.
And sometimes it's not just about market share or profit, above all else. Patagonia stands out as having a really strong why, doesn't it? A different kind of driving force.
Patagonia, yeah. Highlighted in Let My People Go Surfing, they explicitly call themselves an experiment to prove that doing the right thing makes for good and profitable business. It challenges conventional thinking, showing that a deep commitment to values, a clear sense of purpose, their why, can be an incredibly powerful strategy.
How so?
It builds intense customer loyalty, attracts amazing talent, and yeah, it leads to profit. It shows purpose and profit aren't enemies. They can actually fuel each other.
That leads perfectly into the idea of mission. 7 Habits stresses that mission statements are vital. But not just any mission statement handed down from on high.
Absolutely not. The source is clear. They need to come from within the bowels of the organization. Everyone needs to be involved, feel like they had a part in creating it.
So the process matters as much as the words.
Exactly. That shared dialogue, that commitment generated through involvement, that's what gives it power. When people feel they've contributed, they own it. IBM is a great historical example. Their belief system, dignity of the individual, excellent service it spread, almost like osmosis, became part of the culture.
And it wasn't just posters on the wall, was it?
Yeah.
That idea of a mission coming from within is powerful.
Yeah.
But how do you know if it's real, if it's truly embedded, not just aspirational fluff? What's the acid test?
The real test comes under pressure, in a crisis, or when it costs something significant. The sources tell this amazing story about IBM living its values. An employee got seriously ill during training in New York. IBM arranged great local care, but his wife back in California really wanted him home.
Right.
So IBM, without blinking, despite the huge cost and hassle, arranged a helicopter to the airport, a special plane, flew him back to California.
Wow. That's commitment.
Right. It shows their belief in the dignity of the individual wasn't just a slogan. It was real, lived out, even when it meant a big, expensive, empathetic decision. That's when values show their true weight. Hashtag 1.2 strategic evolution and organizational learning.
Okay, so no strategy lasts forever, right? The world changes. What worked yesterday might be useless tomorrow. This brings us to strategic evolution, organizational learning. The sources say even a blue ocean, that new market space, will eventually attract competitors and turn red.
That's a key insight from Blue Ocean strategy, yeah.
Yeah.
You can't rest on your laurels. Organizations have to constantly adapt, renew their strategies. Sustained success needs dynamic renewal, not just a one-time win, because others will eventually try to copy you.
So how do companies stay ahead?
This continuous adaptation, it's fueled by human capital investments, building the knowledge base, developing those value-producing routines. It's an ongoing cycle of innovation, learning, adapting.
So strategy is never finished. It's alive, needs constant feeding and care. And you mentioned that connects to this idea of dynamic competence, where the ability to learn and change is the advantage.
Exactly. That's dynamic competence theory. Competitive advantage isn't static. It comes from having superior skills and knowledge and being able to reconfigure them over time. It's not just having smart people. It's how the organization learns, adapts, leverages its resources as things change. Building that internal learning engine makes you resilient.
When you talk about managing change in a huge company, Alfred Sloan at GM,
Ah.
his approach seems legendary. How did he handle that complexity?
Sloan's approach, detailed in My Years with General Motors, was brilliant. He balanced centralized coordination with decentralized initiative. He made sure everyone was pulling in the same general direction, finding efficiencies, but he fiercely protected the independence of the divisions. Let them run their own show within limits.
And his meetings, they sound intense.
Meticulous. He'd listen, clarify everything until he got it. Then, right after, he'd write these detailed memos. Summary, conclusions, who does what by when, sent copies to everyone.
Wow, no room for misunderstanding there.
Created amazing clarity and accountability in a massive, complex beast like GM back then.
But even with great structures, external stuff can force your hand, right?
Yeah.
Like those GM wage negotiations in the 50s. They had a contract, but still had to change it.
Yeah, that's a fascinating example. They had this 5-year contract. The union had supposedly waived the right to bargain on anything, seemed ironclad. But public pressure, seeing workers in similar industries getting cost of living raises added to their base pay, it forced GM back to the table.
So reality intruded.
Exactly. They ended up incorporating a big chunk of that cost of living allowance into the permanent base rate. Shows how dynamic management is. You can plan meticulously, but you still need to be flexible when the world changes around you.
And sometimes the path forward is just murky, even for the leaders. Andy Grove talks about this, right? When decision makers themselves aren't sure.
Grove, in high output management, really hits on this. He stresses overcoming that fear of sounding dumb, fear of being overruled to just start the discussion, take a stand, especially when the knowledge needed isn't held by the person with the formal power to decide.
The person closest to the problem often knows best.
Precisely. When things are truly complex, you need courageous candor from everyone involved to push through the uncertainty. Grove argues those insights from the front lines must be surfaced for good decision-making, especially when the stakes are high. It's about creating an environment where people feel safe to speak up.
Okay, let's switch gears. We've talked internal strategy, now let's look outward. To market dynamics, investment decisions. Powerful forces often feel impersonal. The sources start with a warning. Be careful with analogies. Don't treat countries like companies, for instance.
Yes, Paul Krugman's "A Country is Not a Company" makes that point strongly. He argues business execs often misapply corporate thinking to national economies, like thinking more exports automatically equals more jobs, or getting tangled up about foreign investment and trade balances. These false analogies can lead to really flawed perspectives on international trade.
Because a country can't go bankrupt like a company can.
Essentially, yes, the dynamics are different. You need the right framework for the right scale.
Okay, so sticking with the right framework. When we zoom into individual investment decisions, what are the realities investors need to face, particularly around risk and returns?
Well, a random walk down Wall Street points out a huge shift in bond returns. From the early 80s to the late 2010s, bonds, especially treasuries, did incredibly well. Why? High yields. Double-digit yields sometimes.
Right, I remember those days.
But the source warns, with 10-year yields around 3% back in 2018 when it was written, future returns are highly unlikely to be anywhere near as good. Plus, if yields rise back to more normal levels, bond prices will fall. That hammers returns even more.
So don't expect the past to repeat itself with bonds.
Exactly. It shows how market conditions cycle. Yields drive bond returns, and when they're low, future returns probably will be too. You can't just extrapolate.
What about stocks, especially the smaller, less famous ones? Benjamin Graham, the value investing guru, had specific advice there, didn't he? About a bargain basis.
Graham, in The Intelligent Investor, laid down the foundation. He said, for satisfactory returns from these secondary stocks, you should buy them only if he buys them for less than their value to a private owner. Basically, find a bargain relative to intrinsic worth.
Buy $1 worth of assets for 50 cents.
That's the idea. Buy a piece of the business for way less than it's actually worth. He also noted an interesting shift over time. Historically, weak companies held on to profits because they couldn't reinvest well, and that hurt their stock price. But now, strong growing companies deliberately keep dividends low, and investors often approve if that reinvested money is expected to generate even higher future earnings.
So investors prioritize growth potential over immediate cash.
If they trust the company can compound that capital effectively, yes. It's a shift in perspective, focusing on long-term value creation.
Fascinating. And investor psychology. That seems to play a massive, sometimes irrational role. Howard Marks talks about greed and fear, right?
Oh, absolutely. Marx, in The Most Important Thing Illuminated, calls them excesses. Greed and optimism repeatedly leads people to pursue strategies they hope will produce high returns without high risk. Sound familiar?
Uh-huh. Bubbles.
Exactly. And conversely, fear like greed connotes excess. It stops you taking constructive action, leads to panic selling, missing opportunities. He argues real skill isn't just about picking winners, it's about performing well, even when your particular style is out of favor with the market. Discipline matters more than chasing trends.
And this ties right into luck versus skill. Nassim Taleb's work, Fooled by Randomness, comes up here too. Mark seems to lean heavily on Taleb's ideas about honesty in assessing results.
He does. Marx really stresses how we tend to credit skill for wins and blame bad luck for losses. But separating those two is crucial for real learning, avoiding arrogance, which connects perfectly to Taleb's black swan idea. That concept really underscores how fragile our knowledge, our predictions really are. It demands humility.
You mentioned Taleb and randomness, and that immediately brings the black swan to mind. It's such a powerful concept.
Yeah.
Can you unpack it for us? Beyond just rare event, what makes something a true black swan?
Yeah, it's fundamental. Taleb's The Black Swan uses that historical example. Everyone in the old world knew all swans were white, based on millennia of confirmatory sightings. Unshakable belief. Until they got to Australia and saw a black one. Boom! One single observation invalidated centuries of proof. It shows this severe limitation to our learning from observations and the fragility of our knowledge. So, a black swan event has 3 traits. First, it's an outlier, totally outside normal expectations. Second, it has an extreme impact. And third, despite being unpredictable beforehand, human nature makes us cook up explanations after it happens, making it seem like it should have been predictable.
Hindsight bias.
Exactly. We rationalize it after the fact. Taleb argues our brains are wired for simple, linear cause and effect, but reality often hits us with these nonlinear, unpredictable shocks that completely change the game. We expect steady progress, but sometimes get sudden revolutions. Hashtag 2.2 market inefficiencies and the financial ecosystem.
And those unpredictable moments, they create openings, right?
Yeah.
Or sometimes just chaos, which leads us into market inefficiencies, how the financial world evolves. Junk bonds, for example, that was a massive disruption.
Michael Lewis's Liar's Poker captures that era brilliantly. Michael Milken basically created the modern junk bond market. He gave companies access to capital they couldn't get anywhere else, often smaller, growing firms the big banks ignored. His pitch was almost populist: invest in the future of America.
Right, the fallen angels and rising stars.
Exactly. It hugely expanded the market for high-yield, high-risk debt, a whole new financing ecosystem challenging the old Wall Street guard.
But it also fueled some crazy risk-taking, didn't it? Like that story about Tom Spiegel and Columbia Savings and Loan.
Oh, definitely. Spiegel is a classic example of the excess. Influenced by Milken, he ballooned his S&L's balance sheet from maybe $370 million to over $10 billion. Much of it junk. It was like a license to print money because his institution was federally insured, using guaranteed deposits to buy super risky bonds.
Until it wasn't.
Right. And Lewis also describes the ignorance of many savings and loans, comparing them to ducks flying over the same hunters repeatedly until shot down. They lost fortunes to savvier brokers like Salomon Brothers. It was often a zero-sum game. One Salomon broker famously said, $1 out of my customer's pocket was $1 in ours. Brutal.
So financial innovation.
Yep.
It's a double-edged sword. Salomon themselves invented something, the CMO, that initially helped them, but then kind of backfired by making the market too efficient.
That's right. The collateralized mortgage obligation, or CMO, Salomon and First Boston cooked it up. The goal was to make mortgage bonds behave more like regular bonds. Mortgages had this unpredictable repayment timing. CMOs sliced them into tranches with different maturities, making them seem more predictable, more appealing to investors.
And it worked.
It did, initially, broaden the market. But it also standardized what had been a unique, quirky, highly profitable niche for Salomon. Once the secret was out, everyone could do it. The special edge vanished. Innovation can sometimes lead to its own commoditization.
And the hidden risks in complex finance. Boy, did they come home to roost in the subprime crisis. The Big Short laid that bare. Just fundamental failures everywhere.
The subprime mess exposed blatant fraud, absolutely. Especially how rating agencies modeled risk. They assumed people could pay 12% interest just as easily as 8%.
Which is crazy for subprime borrowers.
Completely unrealistic, given their financial state and how those loans were structured to explode upwards. This basic failure in modeling, ignoring the reality of distressed borrowers, it meant things like credit default swaps on those dicey triple-B tranches looked too good to be true to the few who actually looked closely. Those risks just snowballed into systemic meltdown. The ignorance about what was actually in those mortgage pools was staggering. Bonds backed by loans already going bad weren't even repriced. Total market failure.
Even tech companies like Amazon back in the day rode these market waves, right? Raising exceedingly cheap capital during the dot-com frenzy.
The Everything Store covers that well. Amazon, late 90s, early 2000s, they tapped into that dot-com mania big time, raised hundreds of millions through junk bonds, then over $1 billion in convertible debt. And the interest rates, super low, like 4.75% on that convertible debt. Just exceedingly cheap capital, as the book says, all fueled by hype, the promise of future growth.
Which let them scale like crazy.
Exactly. That cheap capital bankrolled their massive expansion, investments in warehouses, new categories, stuff they couldn't have done nearly as fast with traditional financing. Market sentiment was key.
These big shifts in finance, they often seem linked to broader tech revolutions, don't they? It's not just finance changing itself, it's technology fundamentally changing finance.
Totally. Finance and technical change makes that link explicit. It says financial capital has a fundamental role in the articulation and propagation of technological revolutions. It references Carlota Perez's work on techno-economic paradigms. These aren't just single inventions, but whole interconnected waves of technology, industries, infrastructure. They last maybe half a century.
Like steam power or electricity.
Or the information age now. Each wave reshapes the whole economy, creates new wealth opportunities, overcomes resistance. And finance is always right there, enabling it, sometimes driving it.
And fintech is the current manifestation of that, right? More than just efficiency gains.
The technological revolution in financial services argues fintech is much bigger than just automating old processes to cut costs. It's about fundamentally reimagining business processes, introducing entirely new business models in finance. It's like the R&D function of financial services in the digital world.
Using AI, blockchain, big data.
Exactly. Startups using tech to disrupt incumbents, attack inefficiencies, offer totally new ways to manage money, pay for things, invest. It's shaking up the whole industry.
This wider view brings us back to some foundational economic ideas. Keynes, Adam Smith, giants in the field. What were their key contributions that still resonate?
John Maynard Keynes, in his general theory, really challenged the classical view that markets always self-correct. He argued employment depends on aggregate supply, people's tendency to consume, and crucially, the level of investment. He pointed out this psychological law. When income goes up, people spend more, sure, but they also save more. This creates a gap that needs to be filled by investment to keep employment high.
So savings don't automatically equal investment?
Not necessarily at a level that guarantees full employment, Keynes argued. He critiqued laissez-faire, saying interest rates and investment levels don't automatically adjust to the optimal point, which means governments might need to step in sometimes. Worrying about things like the balance of trade wasn't a waste of time, as classical economists thought, because intervention might be needed.
Challenging the invisible hand to some extent. And Adam Smith, he kind of wrote the original playbook centuries earlier.
Adam Smith's Wealth of Nations, foundational stuff. He stressed the interdependence of economic phenomena, how everything connects. And his big thesis, unintended social outcomes. The invisible hand idea, individual self-interest, can, counterintuitively, lead to collective good.
Specialization of labor.
Right. And his core idea that labor is the real measure of the exchangeable value of all commodities. Value ultimately comes from the work involved. He laid out how national income comes from wages, profits, rent, the basic mechanics of a market economy. But even his work, foundational as it is, gets critiqued and built upon, like Keynes showed. Economic thought never stands still.
Okay, we've covered grand strategy, market forces, but none of it happens without people, right? They're the engine. So let's dive into the human element, leadership, teams, individual effectiveness. Starting with management itself, Peter Drucker had some really strong opinions about managing the managers.
Drucker, yeah, in The Practice of Management, he makes this killer point. How well managers are managed determines whether business goals will be reached. Simple, but profound. He slams personnel departments for focusing only on the rank and file, basically ignoring the managers. He calls it a serious mistake.
Why?
Because a worker's attitude, their productivity, how effective they are, it directly mirrors how well their manager is managed, how competent the management structure is. If managers aren't managed well, it just cascades down. Bad management breeds bad results.
It's a ripple effect. Makes sense. And speaking of performance, Andy Grove's point about performance reviews. No surprises, right? If you're doing your job as a manager.
Groves, in high output management, is super clear on that. If you're having regular one-on-ones, giving feedback, guiding people, then the performance review should just be a summary, no bombshells. But he adds this crucial bit. If there is a surprise message, something tough that needs saying to improve performance, then you must deliver it.
Even if it's uncomfortable.
Especially then. You have to confront the issue directly, constructively. It's vital for growth and for the integrity of the whole process.
Delivering that tough feedback, though, that's hard. Kim Scott's radical candor really tackles this head on, doesn't it? That balancing act.
Radical candor, yeah, it gets right into that challenge. How do you criticize constructively while still showing you care about the person and believe in their potential? Scott points out that just being blunt about poor work can feel mean if you don't handle it right.
So what's the secret?
She gives practical tips. Build the relationship first. Ask for criticism yourself before giving it. Praise more than you criticize. Be humble. Give guidance in person right away. Criticize in private. And crucially, don't personalize focus on the behavior or the work, not the person.
Challenge directly. Care personally.
That's the mantra. Clear and kind.
But I imagine that's even trickier for some people. The sources mention this abrasive trap, particularly for women leaders, makes radical candor even harder.
Yeah, that's a really tough, unfair reality highlighted there. The abrasive trap. It describes how, for women, being highly competent or direct can actually make them seem less likable.
It's a double standard.
Exactly. So it makes it incredibly difficult for women to be radically candid with men or other women without facing backlash. Being called abrasive or bossy, it makes delivering necessary criticism much harder without undermining their own position. It's a real bind.
So feedback, whether easy or tough, boss to employee, peer to peer, is just essential. The Dare to Lead workbook calls them essential experiences.
Right. The workbook frames feedback as vital for living into our values. How else do you know if you're on track? How do you understand your impact? How do you know when to give or ask for support? It reframes feedback not as punishment, but as a gift, information that helps us grow personally and professionally.
Okay, so managing down is critical, but what about managing up? Managing your boss. That sounds political, or is it more practical?
Much more practical. Not about manipulation at all. It's about building an effective working relationship with the person who manages you. The source, Managing Your Boss, starts with the basic truth. You're not going to change either your basic personality structure or that of your boss, so forget that.
Okay, so what can you do?
Focus on awareness. Understand what helps or hinders that specific relationship. Then act consciously to make it work better. Like, if you and your boss always end up digging in your heels, arguing harder, that's a dysfunctional cycle. Someone needs to break it, maybe by understanding their priorities better or communicating differently.
And compatible work styles seem huge here. Adapting to how your boss likes to receive information.
Absolutely critical. The source gives that example. A manager adapting to a boss who wants the bottom line first conclusions, recommendations, minimum background detail, versus someone who prefers to explore options together, understanding their style, their priorities, how they like to communicate. It builds trust, ensures your message gets through, minimizes friction. It's about meeting them halfway.
Okay, moving from one-on-one to groups. The power of teams. The discipline of teams distinguishes between team discipline and single leader discipline. What's the key difference?
It's fundamental. With true team discipline, only the team can succeed and only the team can fail. The emphasis is on mutual accountability, shared commitment to collective results.
Not just individual contributions adding up.
Right. It's a small group, complementary skills, common purpose, shared goals, an approach they all buy into, and they hold each other accountable. That's different from a single leader model where the boss is ultimately responsible and people are more like individual spokes on a wheel.
And SMART goals are key for figuring out when you actually need that team approach.
Exactly. Specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time-bound goals give that shared clarity. Helps the groom decide when real-time collaboration and mutual accountability are truly necessary.
Makes sense. Clarity and accountability again. The 5 dysfunctions of a team also digs into team dynamics, highlighting ground rules and the need for conflict. That sounds counterintuitive.
The book, through the story's protagonist, Catherine, makes a powerful case for it. Setting ground rules like be present and participate is basic, but she insists meetings should be loaded with conflict, healthy, constructive conflict, that is. Why? To avoid boredom, yes, but more importantly, to actually resolve the important issues.
People often avoid conflict at work, though.
They do. Catherine acknowledges the resistance to team stuff and tackling conflict head-on, but she argues overcoming that resistance, creating psychological safety where people can challenge ideas openly, debate plans. That's vital for real success. Without that constructive conflict, bad decisions get made, resentment builds, things fester. Hashtag tag 3.2 individual growth and mindset.
Clearly, personal effectiveness underlies everything: leading, managing, just doing good work. Peter Drucker, in Managing Oneself, had this really interesting take on knowledge workers later in their careers. Not finished, just bored.
Drucker's observation is sharp. Knowledge workers often hit their peak in their first career relatively early, maybe around 40 or 50, but they've still got decades of potential contribution left. So they're not finished, he says. They are merely bored. This boredom, the sense of plateauing, drives the need for a second career, or at least continuous learning and reinvention.
So you have to manage your own career trajectory.
Increasingly, yes. The responsibility shifts. You have to proactively manage your development, your engagement, to stay fulfilled and productive over a long working life.
And Stephen Covey introduces paradigm shifts, how changing our fundamental perspective is key to effectiveness. It's about the lens we use.
Exactly. Covey's map is not the territory idea from 7 Habits. If your mental map, your paradigm, your understanding of reality is flawed, then just working harder or being more positive won't help. You'll just get to the wrong place faster.
And you need the right map first.
Right. A paradigm shift is that fundamental change in perception, seeing things in a new way, which then allows you to act effectively because your actions align with a more accurate reality.
This feels connected to his begin with the end in mind habit, visualizing success before you even start.
Very connected. Visualization is key. Covey points out that peak performers, athletes, top business people, they see it, they feel it, they experience it before they actually do it. By mentally creating that success, that internal comfort zone for achieving the goal, you prepare yourself. You build confidence, clarify the path. It's mental creation before physical creation, designing before building.
And part of that design involves relationships. Covey's emotional bank account building trust seems core to personal effectiveness, too.
Absolutely. The most important deposit you can make in that account where trust and goodwill accumulate is understanding the individual, really listening, empathizing, seeing their perspective, making what's important to them important to you.
Yeah.
That builds incredibly strong trust-based relationships.
He tells that story about the dad taking his son to baseball games.
Yeah, the dad didn't even like baseball. But he took his son to see every major league team because, as he said, I like my son that much. It shows how valuing the person means valuing what they value, even if it's not your thing. That's a huge deposit in the emotional bank account.
That's powerful. Which brings us to Grit, Angela Duckworth's work.
Yeah.
It's gotten a lot of buzz. It emphasizes resilience, sticking with things, more than just talent.
Duckworth's research in Grit is compelling. She finds successful people are extremely resilient because their need to achieve what they envision is stronger than the pain they experience as they struggle to achieve it. Oh, it's not just innate talent or fleeting passion, it's sustained passion and perseverance towards long-term goals. Sticking with it day after day, year after year through setbacks. That's grit.
And Ray Dalio, in Principles, also talks about struggle, specifically embracing mistakes, not shielding yourself from the pain.
Dalio is very direct about this. Mistakes will cause you pain, but you shouldn't try to shield yourself or others from it. Pain is a message that something is wrong. He believes confronting mistakes, analyzing them ruthlessly, is the fastest way to learn and improve. Don't hide from them. Learn from them.
He has that line about being shocked by how stupid you were a year ago.
Yeah. If you're not shocked, you probably haven't learned much. It's about radical honesty with yourself, turning failures into lessons. continuous improvement fueled by mistakes.
A lot of the self-improvement wisdom, especially around finance and discipline, sounds timeless, like the advice in The Richest Man in Babylon. What core lessons does that offer?
The richest man in Babylon had these incredibly simple yet powerful principles. First, a part of all you earn is yours to keep. Basically, pay yourself first, save before you spend. It also warns how our necessary expenses will always grow to equal our incomes unless we protest to the contrary. That's lifestyle creep. You have to consciously separate needs from wants.
And the seventh remedy.
That one's profound. Cultivate thy own powers, to study and become wiser, to become more skillful, to so act as to respect thyself. Build your skills, build your wisdom, build self-respect. That builds the confidence needed to achieve your goals, financial or otherwise. Personal development is key.
That links so well to influencing others. Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People, still relevant today. It seems to boil down to understanding human nature.
Carnegie's genius was showing the power of simple, genuine appreciation and understanding others' viewpoints. That anecdote about George Eastman, the Kodak founder, and the guy admiring his oak paneling. Eastman usually ignored the paneling, busy with bigger things. But when someone genuinely appreciated its craftsmanship, Eastman lit up, engaged warmly. It shows how acknowledging what matters to others, even small things, builds rapport, connection, influence. It's about making people feel seen and valued.
Okay, let's shift now to innovation, disruption, growth, especially in this fast-changing world. We heard earlier, all power starts with invention. That theme just keeps popping up.
It really does. Invention, broadly defined again, new products, processes, models, seems to be the seed of any real, lasting competitive advantage. But this drive for invention creates a huge challenge for established companies. Clayton Christensen's Innovator's Dilemma digs right into this.
Right, the dilemma being.
Established firms are great at sustaining technologies, making existing products better for their current best customers, like improving disk drives incrementally. But they often fumble disruptive technologies, things that start out simpler, cheaper, maybe serving a niche market, but eventually grow to overturn the whole industry.
So they listen too closely to their current customers and miss the next big thing that those customers don't want yet. How do they manage that, especially when the core business is humming along?
Christensen's radical advice: create small, independent organizations to nurture those disruptive technologies. Give them autonomy. This allows flexibility to fail, but to fail on a small scale. Lets them experiment, iterate, find new markets without being crushed by the main company's processes, metrics, or customer demands.
Like a protected incubator.
Exactly. Fostering radical innovation without killing the golden goose. Giving disruptive ideas the different environment they need to survive and thrive.
That sounds a bit like the minimum viable product or MVP concept from the lean startup. Getting something out there fast, learning quickly.
Very much in the same spirit. Eric Ries defines the MVP as the fastest way to get through the build, measure, learn feedback loop with the minimum amount of effort. It's not about perfection. It's about getting validated learning about customers fast with minimal investment.
He uses Groupon as an example, right? Their early version was super basic.
Amazingly basic. Handmade PDFs and pizza coupons, Ries calls it. They proved the concept, got crucial market feedback before building complex tech. Low tech, high learning, maximum learning for minimum effort.
The lean startup also brings up the 5 whys technique from Toyota, right? How does that help startups specifically?
The 5 whys. Yeah, it's a simple but powerful problem-solving tool. Keep asking why about a problem until you get to the root cause. For startups, Ries adapts it to tie investments directly to the prevention of the most problematic symptoms. Instead of just fixing surface issues, you dig down.
So you don't waste resources fixing the same underlying problem over and over.
Precisely. Find the fundamental issue and fix that. It helps you learn faster from failures, build more robust systems, and make sure your limited resources are focused on what really matters.
When you talk drive and vision, Elon Musk comes to mind. Polarizing, maybe, but undeniably effective at pushing boundaries.
The Musk biography paints him as incredibly demanding, intense, yes, but also inspiring utmost respect for his vision and drive to execute. There's that story about SpaceX's CU communications box for NASA. Everyone was cynical, deadlines were insane, they nailed the tests, first try, record time. It shows how Musk challenges assumptions, pushes teams way beyond what seems possible. He operates with this almost audacious self-belief that problems are solvable, and it pulls people along, fuels that relentless innovation culture.
Steve Jobs had a similar ability, didn't he? Seeing opportunities others missed, making bold leaps.
Absolutely. Good strategy, bad strategy points to Jobs' genius for recognizing the next window of opportunity, the next set of forces he could harness, and then having the quickness and cleverness to pounce. The iPod, the iPhone, classic examples. He didn't just iterate, he imagined entirely new categories, new ecosystems, tapped into latent desires, emerging tech, redefined markets people didn't even know existed until he showed them.
And sometimes those game-changing strategic moves, they don't even look like big decisions at the time, like Intel and their early microprocessors.
That's a fantastic insight into how strategy unfolds. Initially, Intel's first microprocessors, the 4004, the 808, were proprietary, designed for specific customers who owned the rights. It was only later, when those customers needed price cuts due to their own market pressures, that Intel negotiated. In exchange for lower prices, Intel got the rights to sell those chips to other customers.
A routine negotiation turned out to be huge.
Monumental. It inadvertently laid the foundation for Intel's dominance, basically creating the PC microprocessor industry. A seemingly small decision with massive unforeseen consequences shows you can't always predict the pivotal moments. Hashtag 4.2 marketing and customer relationships.
Okay, so you've got the innovation, the strategy, the organization. Now, how do you connect with customers? Build lasting relationships. Seth Godin argues we need to get beyond just yelling at people, right? Beyond interruption.
Godin's permission marketing draws that sharp contrast. Interruption marketing is the old model. Interrupt strangers with ads they didn't ask for. Annoying, often ineffective now. Permission marketing is the opposite. Turn strangers into prospects who choose to hear from you. They opt in.
So it's based on consent.
Consent and value exchange. You offer a curriculum over time, teaching them, building trust gradually. You offer increasing rewards, information, entertainment, discounts to keep their attention. The goal is to turn strangers into friends, then friends into loyal customers, by respecting their time and delivering genuine value.
Earning attention, not stealing it. And his purple cow idea, that takes it further. In a noisy world, just being good isn't enough. You need to be remarkable.
Purple Cow argues exactly that. In a crowded marketplace, the only things that get noticed are the remarkable things, the purple cows. Something so different, so interesting, it makes people stop and talk. He talks about idea viruses, ideas that spread. And they're spread not just by early buyers, but crucially by sneezers.
Sneeze.
Yeah, the experts, the influential people, the enthusiasts who tell their networks. They amplify the message way beyond traditional ads. The product, the idea itself, has to be worth talking about. It becomes its own marketing.
Building on that relationship idea, do you want to keep your customers forever? Goes deep into nurturing those connections long term.
That source is all about building learning relationships, actively gathering and using information about your customers with their permission to serve them better over time. Like the Walden Books example. Their preferred readers program gave discounts for ID, letting them track purchases. Then they could alert customers about new books by favorite authors or local author events.
Personalization based on real data.
Exactly. Moving from blasting everyone with the same message to tailoring the experience based on known preferences and behavior, it creates more value for the customer.
This sounds like a real mindset shift from how do we sell our product to how do we help our customer.
It really is. The source talks about the rise of the customer manager, whose job is finding products for the company's customers. That's the reverse of the traditional product manager finding customers for existing products. It also pushes companies to think about lifetime value, recognizing that keeping a customer longer means more purchases, lower acquisition costs, valuable referrals, maybe even paying a premium. Plus, you get insights to develop new stuff they'll want. Customers become strategic assets.
When you talk brand building, Starbucks is fascinating. They built theirs, starting with their own employees. That seems unusual.
Howard Schultz, in Pour Your Heart Into It, is really open about that. He says, Starbucks built its brand first with our people, not with consumers. They invested heavily in hiring and training passionate employees, partners, they call them, who were genuinely zealous about good coffee.
So the baristas were the brand ambassadors.
Effectively, yes. Their knowledge, their enthusiasm, their daily interactions that created authentic buzz, customer loyalty, showed that a strong internal culture can be your most powerful marketing tool. The brand was lived by the people serving the coffee.
But that kind of explosive growth like Starbucks had must create tensions, keeping the magic alive while scaling.
Schultz talks about those conflicts openly, things like worrying about brand dilution as they expanded everywhere, balancing innovation with protecting the core legacy. Keeping that entrepreneurial spark alive while bringing in professional managers needed for a global company?
Classic growing pains.
Absolutely. How do you keep the soul intact while building the systems needed to manage massive scale? It's a huge challenge for any fast-growing, values-driven company.
Thinking about engagement, Malcolm Gladwell's tipping point looked at what makes ideas or content sticky. How do you make something memorable?
Gladwell uses Blue's Clues, learning from Sesame Street, as a great example. They realized kids weren't just passively watching Sesame Street, they were actively engaged. So Blue's Clues deliberately designed their show to be interactive, asking questions, pausing for answers, directly soliciting participation.
Making the kids feel involved.
Exactly. That active engagement, intellectual and physical, made the content way more memorable and meaningful. It shows how deep interaction, not just passive viewing, makes messages stick.
And finally, let's look at Walmart. Sam Walton's edge.
Yeah.
It was more than just low prices, wasn't it? It was a whole system built around that idea.
Sam Walton, Made in America, makes that clear. Walton's core strategy was relentless. Keep prices as low as possible by keeping costs as low as possible, period. This wasn't just a tactic. It was his operating philosophy, learned way back in his variety store days. It drove everything.
Their expansion strategy reflected that too.
Totally. Expanding first into nearby rural states like Missouri, Oklahoma, then managing everything tightly from Bentonville, Arkansas, centralized logistics, regional managers based there. It was a unique structure meticulously built to support that low-cost, low-price model, constantly squeezing out inefficiencies to pass savings to customers. That was their power. #outro.
Wow. And just like that, we've covered some serious ground. From the bedrock of strategy through the twists and turns of markets, right down to the vital human elements of leadership, grit, innovation.
It's an amazing tapestry, isn't it? Seeing how these different threads, strategic choices, market psychology, human drive, all weave together to create success.
We've seen how deliberate choices, understand the markets, and really investing in people. How that drives results across so many different areas.
And what's really striking is that deep interconnectedness. You can't really separate them. Strategy needs to account for people and markets. Financial success depends on innovation and culture. Individual effectiveness is the foundation for everything else.
Yeah, one piece always affects the others. It's a whole ecosystem.
Exactly. A complex system, but one with underlying principles.
And hopefully these aren't just abstract ideas for you listening. They're real, actionable insights, whether you're managing your career, building something new, or just trying to be more effective day to day. Seeing how these pieces connect, that's the shortcut, we hope, to being truly well-informed.
Yeah.
Seeing those threads in the fabric.
It really is about seeing the bigger picture,
Yeah.
but also appreciating the crucial details within it. And knowing it's an ongoing journey, learning, adapting, applying these ideas. The biggest wins often come from deeply understanding these fundamentals.
So as we wrap up, considering everything we've unpacked today, this interplay of strategy, markets, the human spirit, here's a final thought to chew on. What fundamental paradigm, what core assumption in your approach to work or life might you need to re-examine to unlock your next level? What ingrained belief, maybe like thinking all swans were white, could be limiting your vision of what's actually possible?